Peace. I just wanted to share my thoughts on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Fred Hampton, who was chairman of the Chicago, Illinois Black Panther Party on this day, December 4th, 1969. It is without question that Fred Hampton was a special revolutionary at the age of 21 to lead the Black Panther Party and to be a national leader of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense that was born in October of 1966. Fred, in his contribution to the revolutionary arc of our struggle for socialism, to dismantle global institutional racism, make that clear, global institutional racism cannot be denied. Fred, at the age of 21, and we think of what we're faced with today and what this generation is faced with, they could find great inspiration and guidance from Fred Hampton, from the level of his clarity, his concise arguments, his understanding of theory. Although I have to put a note down that theory was highly influenced by the politics of the era. It was a politics certainly dominated by Stalinism, a politics dominated by Maoism, a third worldism, and so Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party and their whole theoretical ideological grounding flowed from that process, and how the organization was developed and put together. The best book to read really on the Black Panther Party, the two books to read, is certainly Bobby Seale's Seize the Time, and also a book that came out a number of years ago, Black Against Empire, which I think is the best book on the Black Panther Party. I would also urge people to read Mumia Abu-Jamal's semi-autobiographical book, We Want Freedom, which also chronicles his relationship, his work, his development inside the Philadelphia Black Panther Party, but also some of the pitfalls, some of the positive and negative features of the Black Panther Party, to which Mumia goes into in a very serious way. So back to Fred, I think it's that grounding in that politics of that historical moment that I think on one side shaped Fred, but also it was the work that he did as a young high school activist and organizer for the NAACP, which I think played a very important role to what he would do later on with the Black Panther Party, and particularly in the development of the Rainbow Coalition, the Radical Rainbow Coalition. For those not to get confused by Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, which was certainly not radical in many respects. And so the NAACP, and I think his activism with NAACP, certainly played a very important role in how he understood the questions of race and how he understood the questions of class and the great need for class unity, actually, and among the working class as a whole. But specifically, how do you attack a system that is predicated on the exploitation of the working class and poor, and also that is predicated on the idea of divide and conquer of the working class? And that's where Fred, I think, is at his most, at his best, with his clarity and understanding that race and class were inseparable. In fact, it was tied together under capitalism in its development, in its role in really maintaining its power in society by divide and conquer, but also by its exploitation of the working class. And so Fred played a very crucial and I think vital role at that historical moment. Keep in mind that 1965, February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X is assassinated. Malcolm is also drawing those type of conclusions as well. Certainly his international travels in Africa in particular was very crucial. It helped to internationalize the Black freedom movement, or the radical features of the Black freedom movement of the mid 1960s. And of course, Dr. King is assassinated on April 3rd, 1968. Once again, King is also internationalizing the question, marrying that of the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement against the Vietnam War. And so Fred is part of that arc. He's part of that arc that highlights the need to internationalize it, but also bring the working class together, not ignoring the questions of racism, of sexism within within the wider working class, but in fact find the pathway to our commonalities, to find the pathway to understand how do we fight back against a beast that is predicated on profits at any cost. And so that's where Fred, I think, understood when we think about the Rainbow Coalition developed by the Chicago Black Panther Party, of being able to speak to Puerto Rican street gangs, to be able to discuss with black street gangs, to go into uptown Chicago and speak with the young patriots, youth, first or second generation youth who had migrated out of the South to live in the urban centers of the United States, looking for the same things actually that black workers were looking for in the 1920s and the 1940s, and that is jobs, to escape the poverty, to escape the conditions that exist in the South. Certainly, their parents and their grandparents brought certain racist ideas, ideas of segregation with them, but you had a new young generation that did not have that stain put upon them. In fact, it was the reality of uptown Chicago, the violence of law enforcement, the type of urban poverty that they were living under. And so, under that leadership of Fred Hampton, being able to direct organizers to go into uptown Chicago and to be invited by the young patriots to sit down and discuss actually joint work, joint organizing, because the same issues that were faced in the South and West Chicago were being faced by the community of uptown. And so this is, I think, a very important piece of history that is not discussed. Certainly, I think is not discussed by this generation of political activists who I would say who were certainly influenced by the Black Lives Matter banner, who hold, I would argue, a kind of radical grassroots identity politics. This is a history that is absolutely essential to understand how we're going to go forward in bringing the working class and the poor and the oppressed